Welcome to HortTube, where we talk all things gardening. My name is Jim Putnam, and this is a fine line holly. This is fine line holly, an upright, narrow growing evergreen shrub. Fine line has an upright, narrow habit. It can probably end up reaching 15 feet in height, but never more than probably 5 or 6 feet in width. Fine line would be best grown in horticultural zones 6 to 9. Probably the first year it's not going to grow very quickly, but once it's rooted in, these will probably grow between 6 inches and a foot every year. These types of broadleaf hollies are really adaptable to sun or shade, but they definitely stay fuller the more sun you give them. So I would put it in a space that gets at least a half a day's sun. There's several different uses for fine line. The best use for this is definitely going to be as a screening plant or a border plant between you and a neighbor. Because it is so upright and narrow, this plant makes a fantastic screen on small lots, which there's more and more of those in newer subdivisions. This would be a great choice to create a barrier between you and a neighbor. Frequently, you'll see these used on a corner of a foundation, someplace where you need something tall and narrow to get some height. That's a great choice. And some people actually tree form this. This holly is very similar to one called dwarf Burford, but dwarf Burford grows as a big round ball. It's a fantastic holly, not talking poorly about it. They're similar that way, but with lots getting narrower and narrower, we need plants that are definitely more upright to create screens between us and neighbors. So I think fine line is a very good choice for that. These will flower in the early spring, sometime around mid-April probably, and then we'll develop the berries over the course of the summer, and they'll turn red in the mid to late fall and stay persistent through the wintertime. I've included planting instructions in the description of this video. It'd be really hard to kill this type of holly. They're really kind of industrial. Just don't bury it too deep and don't over mulch it, and you should be fine. For the first year, you want to keep a pretty close eye on these broadleaf hollies and just make sure you're watering them occasionally. They tend to come out of the container kind of root bound, and you're going to do a little bit of damage on that when you break apart the roots. So I would keep a close eye on them that first year, water them occasionally if it comes abnormally dry. Just drown the space around it. Once these are established, they almost never need water if you're in an area that gets normal rainfall. While you're trying to grow them as a screen though, if it does become dry, it won't hurt it, but it will stop growing. So that first couple seasons, I might give them a little more water than I would in the future. Hollies are acid-loving plants, and any fertilizer for acid-loving plants in mid-spring would be ideal. You could actually come back on these in the middle of summer and do a second application. Anything that says azalea, camellia, rhododendron, or has holly in the name of the fertilizer would be ideal for these. Fine line does flower in the spring and has a red berry in the fall and is persistent kind of through the winter. So there's not a great time to prune these where you're not losing some part of that. So when you prune them, I'd really go after them very hard so that you don't have to do it repeatedly every year and you're not always losing those flowers and berries. Fine line would have very few pests in the landscape. Sometimes we'll see scale insects on the oldest interior foliage on these where there's not a lot of air movement in them. It's just not that big of a deal. It can be treated, but I typically would just leave it alone. Not really many chewing insects on the leaves on these. They'd probably be susceptible to root rot if you put them in an area that was just boggy all the time, but you'd have to really go out of your way to even drown one. So they're pretty hardy that way. Deer will graze on these broadleaf hollies. It's not something they're really going to go after very hard, but if you have deer issues, I probably would choose a different plant for my screening plant. So what are you waiting for? Even you can grow the industrial, white flowering, red berrying, fine line holly. Thank you for watching my video, and if it was helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for future videos. Also comment below with any questions you have about screening plants. Thanks again.